because in taxis, they're always like, oh yeah, how long you been in Singapore for? And it's like, oh, I was born and raised here. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, so you're Singaporean? And I was like, oh, no.
Elena's remarkable story unfolds like this. Born and raised in Singapore, she's still technically considered a foreigner. She shared with me how Singapore has changed throughout her life, the top hidden and unique spots to visit here, and how she feels about being a native-born resident yet holding an employment pass. I'm Max, entrepreneur and YouTuber. Let's dive in.
I guess from birth to where I am here, I've been in Singapore my whole life, except for 3 years at sea. My dad used to work in oil and gas pre-retirement, and my mom was part of his crew. How it happened, well, they fell in love, and then she was pregnant. She actually kept it a secret, believe it or not, till the last minute. And when she went into labor, the closest place was Singapore. Ironically, they actually fell in love because of Sentosa. Yeah, that was their story. They loved it here. They'd always come to Sentosa when they were in port here. Yeah, I was born. They brought me back on board, and for 3 years of my life, believe it or not, I was actually at sea.
Both of your parents were like sailors, if I can say it.
Sailors, yeah, that's probably a general term. They didn't sail necessarily on a sailboat, but yeah, they were at sea. So let's call them sailors. That's probably an easy generic way. At the point of time when I was born, my parents didn't have an address, so they just put my dad's office address, which was the shipping company he worked with. That was 78 Shenton Way, floor 10. Now, the caveat is now that's my current office. And what happened was it didn't click because my husband was, I don't know why, there was talking with my dad, and then somehow my birth certificate came up, and then my husband looks at the birth certificate, he's like, this is our office. And then it clicked for me as well. So I guess if we're talking about fate in a weird way, I guess I was fated to end up as a financial consultant at this company. But it's amazing because next to that building, I also learned how to walk apparently, which it just all didn't click until we looked at my birth certificate.
How people normally react when they hear, especially Singaporeans, when they're like, oh, you're Singaporean as well? How they react?
Just shocked, I guess. Probably because in taxis, they're always like, oh yeah, how long you been in Singapore for? And it's like, oh, I was born and raised here. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, so you're Singaporean? And I was like, oh, no. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm actually Russian. That's a story on its own why I'm not Singaporean. So yeah, I mean, it's just, definitely people are shocked. I mean, clients are more shocked because when they see my name, it's like Lena and they expect a Russian accent, and then it's an American accent, and then it's not American, it's actually born, raised in Singapore, and then people get super confused.
You ever applied for citizenship here?
No, I haven't. They did tell my parents I could choose when I was born here, but I guess some laws changed, so that was sort of what happened. I tried to apply for PR, it didn't happen, unfortunately. I'm still trying, so hopefully that works out. But yeah, technically speaking, I'm still on employment pass and I'm a full-on expat, even though I was born here.
For you, just extend your employment pass like every 2-3 years?
Yes, it was interesting. When I first got it, they used to give it to me for a year, believe it or not. And then they increased it to 2, and then they recently increased it to 3.
It's unique. It's super, super unique.
It is such a unique, it's a unique scenario. I guess Singapore is unique in its own ways, but no, I've been lucky to call this place my home. Yes, it's probably not the most traditional way of people when they, find a place and stay for 24 years, usually they become citizens. I've been lucky to, do school here, university, be employed for, in 2 months will be 7 years in the finance industry.
So you are like a personal finance advisor?
Legally, I'm a financial consultant.
I know some like students here in Singapore, people in their like 20s.
Okay.
And I asked them if they invest, and all of them actually, they do invest. They invest in crypto, they invest in like a stock market. I was like, wow, when I was like in my 20s, I didn't know what is like stock market was. Do you think like in general Singaporeans are more advanced with their like in finance and in investing?
To be honest, that's a good point. So I actually did speak to someone recently who's about my age, and same thing. I was expecting, maybe some cash savings and like a small account of, I don't know, an insurance account, because insurance products are quite popular in Singapore. And he's like, yep, I have this large portfolio in stocks. I'm like, oh wow, that's very impressive for your age. And he's like, yeah, I started when I was 18.
If you didn't start investing at 18, it might be time to begin now, especially if you are watching a video supported by Moomoo, a one-stop investment platform. One of the simplest investment types is stocks. Purchasing a stock means you own a share in the company that issued it. If the stock price goes up, you can sell it for profit. For instance, if you had invested 1,000 Sing dollars in Microsoft stock 5 years ago, your investment would be worth nearly 3,000 Sing dollars today. That's impressive, especially since you haven't actively worked for it in 5 years. To learn where to invest today, click my link to sign up for Moomoo. Access to the latest financial news and in-depth analytics will help you make informed decisions. Now you can invest and grow with your favorite brands using the Moomoo app. New users can get a guaranteed Coca-Cola stock and up to 128 Sing dollars cash coupon for a total value of up to 218 Sing dollars. Additionally, Moomoo is offering Mother's Day rewards. Share my link with your mom and receive another 50 Sing dollars cashback. Just click my link in description to claim your rewards.
How was growing up in Singapore, like in 90s and 2000s?
The expat community was smaller, and I guess what we're all now quite spoiled of all the choices as like expats with like Western food and all these other like international cuisines. Like there's just so much, right? There's Amoy Street, there's Kyongsek, there's I don't know, there's MBS, like there's just so much international options if we wanted to, as well as like bars or pubs. Like back then it was just Harry's pretty much, which still exists apparently. There's one in Vivo. So if I guess when I'd go with my friends and their parents, they'd all bring us to Harry's. I guess if you wanted sushi, it would just be Sushi Tay. There wasn't all these like 7, 9 different or 20 different types that we have now. So the food scene definitely was much smaller back then. I guess when you're younger, it doesn't really matter. Expat areas were more like Holland Village, Orchard Road, because Vivo City didn't exist, Marina Bay Sands didn't exist, Universals didn't exist. Yeah, Vivo City did not exist. So all these places where kids now hang out. And to be fair, Vivo City opened I think when I was 11. So that was like a hangout spot for me. And I think Universals was when I was 15 or 16. So that was my first theme park that I actually went to. That was my first roller coaster. I was terrified. My friends put me on the Cyclone, which is like the worst out of them all in the first round. But I feel like as a child growing up here, maybe because I was growing with Singapore, I still got to experience everything that someone abroad did. And in my mind now, I look back, I'm like, okay, wow, there were perks still when Singapore wasn't so developed. But genuinely speaking, first of all, it was just so safe. My parents weren't scared at all. You know, you could just, I was 10 and I was just taking a bus, or you could genuinely walk out on the streets at 11 p.m. with another friend and you're 12 and nothing happens to you. So from a safety perspective, it was amazing.
Do you feel like Singapore was more strict back then and now it's like getting more like liberalized?
Different. I guess if we start looking at things like, you know, more progressive in terms, I mean, you know, the most recent act with the whole
377A.
377A, yeah, exactly. So stuff like that, of course, you look back in the 90s, it would just be like, no way, you know? So I guess, like you said, from that angle, you know, being more acceptive of people from different backgrounds, different orientations, like they definitely are progressing. Genuinely speaking, from like a crime aspect, I guess, I feel like they were more strict back then. Like things with, they go through phases. There was a phase where they were really fixated on stopping people chewing gum, as an example. Now, I haven't seen anyone chewing gum. Maybe that's because that phase has just ended, but they were really fixated on fixing that. Or there'd be a year where they were really fixated on littering. I guess they take every year and maybe they have meetings on what they want to sort of fix. I still think they're strict. It's just they're a bit more progressive on inclusivity, I guess. They're more open to people from different nationalities. Also, you know, whether you're gay or straight, you can still come and work in Singapore.
Do you feel local or do you feel more like foreigner?
I would say I feel local. I mean, just growing up, I would actually only eat chicken rice when I'm out.
Yeah.
And then also growing, again, people ask me, oh, what's your hangover fix, right? Everyone's burger or whatever. And I'm like, I'm actually, you know, chicken rice or wonton mee, or, so I guess these little things. And because I've been here my whole life. Home is Singapore. I wouldn't necessarily say it's Russia just because I've never lived there.
What's the, okay, from the, like, let's say, local perspective, if someone is coming to Singapore, what would be the 3 top places they should visit? Maybe not so obvious ones, not like the Gardens by the Bay or MBS, something like maybe more unique.
It depends on what the person's doing, if they're active. So you could actually go kayaking in the wetlands of Singapore up in the north. There's a few different spots, and don't ask me the names because I forgot already. But it's very easily Googleable. And I remember doing that during COVID, because during COVID we were kind of stuck here, right? So that's when I started thinking, okay, outside the box, what can I do that will not make me feel so trapped? So yeah, I was doing these kayaking trips that were absolutely amazing. It does not look like Singapore at all. It looks like something completely different. I guess also everyone's so fixated on, Botanic Gardens or Makrichi. If you go to like Bukatima Park or Dairy Farm Park, all those parks as well, Bukit Batok Nature Reserve, I guess maybe I'm a bit biased because I grew up there, but they're beautiful. There's these like massive like rocks, and they're like orange, and then there's like a quarry. It's just all really, again, not necessarily what people would look for when they come to Singapore. Or again, if you're a bit more sporty, to like cycle from East Coast Park all the way to like Little Island Brewery. It's like a 50-kilometer cycle. I know it's long, but there and back to the start. But all these like little things that I guess if you're active, there's actually so much more to do than just, like you said, walk in Sentosa. There's a lot of difference. Or you could even hike coast to coast, 36 kilometers of Singapore.
Can you recall any crazy stories that happened with you, like in Singapore?
I guess a crazy story from school, which didn't necessarily happen to me. Expat kids were also very crazy back then. Someone jumped off the bridge in Clarke Quay. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, because it's just
And what happened?
Oh, nothing. He just, I think he just got arrested and given a warning. On that note, So changes in nightlife in Singapore. Clarke Quay used to be the hotspot in Singapore to go out, and now it's not anymore. When was the last time you went to Clarke Quay?
I think after COVID it's really slowed down.
Not even after COVID. I feel like as soon as MBS was built, other like places to go. That's the thing about Singapore, right? They always repurpose things. Or like new things get built, then that's sort of not cool anymore. Or so the St. James Powerhouse, that used to be all nightclubs. Now it's Dyson's headquarters. So it's just like all these things. I guess maybe why I can't think of a crazy story off the top of my head is because there's no seasons in Singapore. Very hard to pinpoint memories sometimes, because it all just blurs into one.
Is there anything that you don't like about Singapore, or maybe you still not get used to?
The heat. That's the one thing I cannot get used to, the heat in Singapore, and it's just not friendly to my hair. Despite the fact of being born here, every time when it's humid, my hair just like frizzes up.
Yeah.
If you like this video, check out the next one. But you have only 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.